As we neared the house, Mr. Granger's Packard rolled from the dusty driveway. Mr. Morrison directed Jack to the side of the road until the big car had passed, then swung the wagon back into the road's center and up the drive. Big Ma was standing by the yard gate that led onto the drive, gazing across the road at the forest. "Big Ma, what was Mr. Granger doing here?" Stacy asked, jumping from the wagon and going to her. Little man Christopher John and I hopped down and followed him. "Nothing," Big Ma replied absently, her eyes still on the forest. "Just worrying me about this land again." "Oh," Stacy said, his tone indicating that he considered the visit of no importance. Mr. Granger had always wanted the land. He turned and went to help Mr. Morrison. Little man and Christopher John went with him, but I remained by the gate with Big Ma. "Big Ma," I said, "what Mr. Granger need more land for?" "Don't need it," Big Ma said flatly. "Got more land now than he know what to do with." "Well, what he want with ours then?" "Just like to have it, that's all." "Well, seems to me he's just being greedy. You ain't gonna sell it to him, are you?" Big Ma did not answer me. Instead, she pushed open the gate and walked down the drive and across the road into the forest. I ran after her. We walked in silence down the narrow cow path which wound through the old forest to the pond. As we neared the pond, the forest gaped open into a wide brown glade, and man-made by the felling of many trees, some of them still on the ground. They'd been cut during the summer after Mr. Anderson came from Strawberry with an offer to buy the trees. The offer was backed with a threat, and Big Ma was afraid. So Anderson's lumbermen came, chopping and sawing, destroying the fine old trees. Papa was away on the railroad then, but Mama sent Stacy for him. He returned and stopped the cutting, but not before many of the trees had already fallen. Big Ma surveyed the clearing without a word, then, stepping around the rotting trees, she made her way to the pond and sat down on one of them. I sat close behind her and waited for her to speak. After a while she shook her head and said, "I'm sure glad your grandpa never had to see none of this. He dearly loved these here old trees. Him and me, we used to come down here early mornings or just 'fore the sun was about to set and just sit and talk. He used to call this place his thinking spot, and he called that old pond there Caroline, after me." She smiled vaguely, but not at me. "You know, I was hardly 18 when Paul Edward married me and brung me here. He was older than me by about 8 years, and he was smart. Oh, my Lord, that was one smart man. He had himself a mind like a steel trap. Anything he seen done, he could do it. He had done learned carpentry back up there near Macon, Georgia, where he was born. Born into slavery he was, 2 years before freedom come, and him and his mama stayed on that plantation after the fighting was finished. But then, when he got to be 14 and his mama died, he left that place and worked his way across here up to Vicksburg." "That's where he met you, ain't it, Big Ma?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Big Ma nodded, smiling. "Sure was. He was carpenterin' up there, and my papa took me in with him to Vicksburg. We was tenant farming about 30 miles from there, to see about getting a store-bought rocker for my mama, and there was old Paul Edward working in that furniture shop just as big. Had himself a good job, but that old job wasn't what he wanted. He wanted himself some land. Kept on talking about land, and then this place come up for sale. And he bought it himself, 200 acres from that Yankee, didn't he?" Big Ma chuckled. That man went right on over to see Mr. Hollenbeck and said, "Mr. Hollenbeck, I understand you got land to sell, and I'd be interested in buying me about 200 acres if your price is right." Old Mr. Hollenbeck questioned him about where he was going to get the money to pay him, but Paul Edward just said, "Don't seem to me to throw a worry about how I'm going to get the money, just as long as you get paid your price." Didn't nothing scare that man, she beamed proudly. And Mr. Hollenbeck went on and let him have it. Of course, now he was just about as eager to sell this land as Paul Edward was to buy. He'd had it for going on 9 years. 20 years. Bought it during Reconstruction from the Grangers. 'Cause they didn't have no money to pay their taxes. Not only didn't they have tax money, didn't have no money at all. That war left them plumb broke. Their old Confederate money wasn't worth nothing, and both Northern and Southern soldiers had done ransacked their place. Them Grangers didn't have nothing, but they had land left, nothing but their land left, and they had to sell 2,000 acres of it to get money to pay them taxes and rebuild the rest of it. And that Yankee bought the whole 2,000. Then he turned round and tried to sell it back to him, huh, Big Ma? Sure did. But not till '87, when your grandpa bought himself that 200 acres. As I hears it, that Yankee offered to sell all 2,000 acres back to Harlan Granger's daddy for less than the land was worth. But that old Fillmore Granger was just about as tight with a penny as anybody ever lived, and he wouldn't buy it back. So Mr. Hollenbeck just left other folks now know he was selling it, and it didn't take long, for he sold all of it, 'cause it was some mighty fine land. Besides, your grandpa, a bunch of other small farmers bought up 800 acres, and Mr. Jameson bought the rest. But that wasn't our Mr. Jameson, I supplied knowingly. That was his daddy. Charles Jameson was his name, Big Ma said. A fine old gentleman, too. He was a good neighbor, and he always treated us fair, just like his son. The Jamesons was what folks call Old South from up in Vicksburg, and as I understands it, before the war they had as much money as anybody, and even after the war they managed better than some other folks, 'cause they had made themselves some northern money. Anyways, old Mr. Jameson got it into his mind that he wanted a farm, and he moved his family from Vicksburg down in here. Mr. Wade Jameson wasn't about but 8 years old then. But he didn't like to farm, I said. Oh, he liked it all right. Just wasn't never much hand at it, though. And after he went up north to law school and all, he just felt he ought to practice his law. Is that how come he sold Grandpa them other 200 acres? Sure is. And it was mighty good of him to do it, too. My Paul Edward had been eyeing that 200 acres ever since 1910, when he done paid off the bank for them first 200. But old Mr. Jameson didn't want to sell. About that same time, Harlan Granger came head of the Granger plantation. You know him, and Wade Jameson about the same year's children. And he wanted to buy back every inch of that land that used to belong to the Grangers. That man crazy about anything. That was before that war, and he wanted his land to be every bit like it was then. Already had more than 4,000 acres, but he just itching to have back them other 2,000 his granddaddy sold. Got back 800 of them, too. Got back 800 of them, too, from them other farmers that bought from Mr. Hollenbach. But Grandpa and old Mr. Jameson wasn't interested in selling, period, was they, Big Ma? They didn't care how much money Mr. Granger offered them, I declared with an emphatic nod. That's the truth of it, all right, agreed Big Ma. But when Mr. Jameson died in 1918 and Wade come head of the family, he sold them 200 acres to Paul Edward and the rest of his land to Harlan Granger and moved his family to Strawberry. He could have just as easily sold the 4,000 acres to the Grangers and gotten more money, but he didn't. And to this day, Harlan Granger still hold it against him 'cause he didn't. The soft swish of the fallen leaves made Big Ma look up from the pond and at the trees again. Her lips curved into a tender smile as she looked around thoughtfully. You know, she said, I can still see Paul Edward's face the day Mr. Jameson sold him them 200 acres. He put his arms around me and looked out at his new piece of land, and he said exactly the same thing he said when he grabbed himself that first 200 acres. Said, Pretty Caroline, how you like to work this fine piece of earth with me? Sure did, said the exact same thing. She grew quiet then, and rubbed the wrinkles down one hand as if to smooth them away. I gazed at the pond, glassy gray and calm, until she was ready to go on. I had learned that at times like these it was better to just sit and wait than to go asking disrupting questions which might vex her. So long ago now, she said eventually in a voice that was almost a whisper, we worked real hard getting them crops sown, getting them reaped. We had us a time, but there was good times too. We was young and strong when we started out, and we liked to work. Neither one of us, I'm proud to say, never was lazy, and we didn't raise us no lazy children neither. Had ourselves 6 fine children. Lost our girls when they was babies, though. I suppose that's one of the reasons I love your sweet mama so much. But them boys grew strong, and all of 'em loved this place as much as Paul Edward and me. They go away, they always come back to it. Couldn't leave it. She shook her head and sighed. Then Mitchell, he got killed in the war, and Kevin got drowned. Her voice faded completely, but when she spoke again it had hardened, and there was a determined glint in her eyes. Now all the boys I got is my baby boys, and your papa and Uncle Hammer, and this they place as much as it is mine. They bloods in this land, and hear that Harlan Granger always talking about buying it. He pestered Paul Edward to death about buying it. Now he pestering me. Humph! She grumped angrily. He don't know nothing about our land, about me or this land. He think I'm going to sell. She became silent again. A cold wind rose, biting through my jacket, and I shivered. Big Ma looked down at me for the first time. You cold? No, ma'am, I stuttered, not ready to leave the forest. Don't you be lying to me, girl, she snapped, putting out her hand. It's time we was going back to the house anyway. Your mama will be home soon. I took her hand, and together we left the Caroline. Despite our every effort to persuade Stacy otherwise, when Mama came home, he confessed that he'd been fighting TJ at the Wallace store and that Mr. Morrison had stopped it. He stood awkwardly before her, disclosing only those things which he could honorably mention. He said nothing of TJ's cheating or that Christopher John, little man, and I had been with him, and when Mama asked him a question he could not answer honestly. He simply looked at his feet and refused to speak. The rest of us sat fidgeting nervously throughout the interview, and when Mama looked our way, we swiftly found somewhere else to rest our eyes. Finally, seeing that she had gotten all the information she was going to get from Stacy, Mama turned to us. I suppose you 3 went to the store too, huh? Finally, seeing that she'd gotten all the information she was going to get from Stacy, Mama turned to us. I suppose you 3 went to the store too, huh? But before any of us could squeak an answer, she exclaimed, That does it! And began to pace the floor, her arms folded, her face cross. Although she scolded us severely, she did not whip us. We were sent to bed early, but we didn't consider that a punishment, and we doubted that Mama did either. How we had managed to escape a whipping we couldn't fathom until Saturday, when Mama woke us before dawn and piled us into the wagon. Taking us southwest toward Snelling's Creek, she said, Where we're going, the man is very sick, and he doesn't look like other people. But I don't want you to be afraid or uncomfortable when you see him. Just be yourselves. We rode for almost 2 hours before turning onto a backwoods trail. We were jarred and bounced over the rough road until we entered a clearing where a small weather-grayed house stood and fields stretched barren beyond it. As Mama pulled up on the reins and ordered us down, the front door cracked wearily open, but no one appeared. Then Mama said, Good morning, Mrs. Barry. It's Mary Logan, David's wife. The door swung wide open, and an elderly woman, frail and toothless, stepped out. Her left arm hung crazily at her side, as if it had been broken long ago, but had not mended properly, and she walked with a limp, yet she smiled widely, throwing her good arm around Mama and hugging her. Land's sakes, child, ain't you something, she exclaimed. Come on to see about those old bones. I just says to Sam, I says, who you reckon come to see old folks like us? These your babies, ain't they? Lord Almighty, ain't they fine? Sure is. She hugged each of us and ushered us into the house. The interior was dark, lit only by the narrow slat of gray daylight allowed in by the open door. Stacy and I carried cans of milk and butter, and Christopher John and Little Man each had a jar of beef and a jar of crowded peas, which Mama and Big Ma had canned. Mrs. Barry took the food, her thanks intermingled with questions about Big Ma, Papa, and the others. When she'd put the food away, she pulled stools from the darkness and motioned us to sit down. Then she went to the blackest corner and said, Daddy, who you s'pose down come to see about us? There was no recognizable answer, only an inhuman, guttural wheezing. But Mrs. Barry seemed to accept it and went on. Miss Logan and her babies. Ain't that something? She took a sheet from a nearby table. "Gots to cover him," she explained. "He can't hardly stand to have nothing touch him." When he was visible again, she picked up a candle stump and felt around a table for matches. "He can't speak no more. The fire burned him too bad. But he understands all right." Finding the matches, she lit the candle and turned once more to the corner. A still form lay there, staring at us with glittering eyes. The face had no nose, and the head no hair. The skin was scarred, burned, and the lips were weazen black, like charcoal. As the wheezing sound echoed from the opening that was a mouth, Mama said, "Say good morning to Mrs. Barry's husband, children." The boys and I stammered a greeting, then sat silently trying not to stare at Mr. Barry during that hour we remained in the small house. But Mama talked softly to both Mr. and Mrs. Barry, telling them news of the community as if Mr. Barry were as normal as anyone else. After we were on the main road again, having ridden in the thoughtful silence over the wooden trail, Mama said quietly, "The Wallaces did that, children. They poured kerosene over Mr. Barry and his nephews and lit them afire. One of the nephews died. The other one is just like Mr. Barry." She allowed this information to penetrate the silence and then went on. "Everyone knows they did it, and the Wallaces even laugh about it, but nothing was ever done. They're bad people, the Wallaces. That's why I don't want you to ever go to their store again for any reason. You understand?" We nodded, unable to speak as we thought of the disfigured man lying in the darkness. On the way home, we stopped at the homes of some of Mama's students, where families poured out of tenants' shacks to greet us. At each farm, Mama spoke of the bad influence of the Wallaces, of the smoking and drinking permitted at their store, and asked that the family's children not be allowed to go there. The people nodded and said she was right. She also spoke of finding another store to patronize, one where the proprietors were more concerned about the welfare of the community, but she did not speak directly of what the Wallaces had done to the Barrys, for, as she explained later, that was something that wavered between the known and the unknown, and to mention it outright to anyone outside of those with whom you were closest was not wise. There were too many ears that listened for others besides themselves, and too many tongues that wagged to those they shouldn't. The people only nodded, and Mama left. When we reached the Turner farm, Moe's widowed father rubbed his stubbled chin and squinted across the room at Mama. "Mis' Logan," he said, "you know I feels the same way you do about them low-down Wallaces, but it ain't easy to just stop shopping there. They overcharges me, and I has to pay them high interest, but I got credit there 'cause Mr. Monteer signs for me. Now, you know most folks round here sharecropping on Monteer, Granger, or Harrison land, and most of them just 'bout got up to shop at the Wallace store or up at the Mercantile in Strawberry, which is just about as bad. Can't go no place else." Mama nodded solemnly, showing she understood. Then she said, "For the past year now, our family's been shopping down at Vicksburg. There are a number of stores down there, and we've found several that treat us well." "Vicksburg?" Mr. Turner echoed, shaking his head. "Lord, Mis' Logan, you ain't expecting me to go all the way to Vicksburg? That's an overnight journey in a wagon down there and back." Mama thought on that a moment. "What if someone would be willing to make the trip for you? Go all the way to Vicksburg and bring back what you need." "Won't do no good," retorted Mr. Turner. "I got no cash money. Mr. Monteer signs for me up at that Wallace store so's I can get my tools, my mule, my seed, my fertilizer, my food, and what few clothes I needs to keep my children from running plumb naked. When cotton picking time comes, he sells my cotton, takes half of it, pays my debt up at the store and my interest for their credit, then charges me 10 to 15% more as risk money for signing for me in the first place. This year I earned me near $200 after Mr. Monteer took his half of the crop money, but I ain't seen a penny of it. In fact, if I manages to come out even without owing that man nothing, I figures I've had a good year. Now, no way down in Vicksburg gonna give a man like me credit." Mama was very quiet and did not answer. "I sure sorry, Mis' Logan. I'm going to keep my young'uns from up at that store, but I've got to live. Y'all got it better than most folks around here, 'cause y'all got your own place, and y'all ain't got a cowtail to a lot of this stuff. But you gotta understand it ain't easy for sharecropping folks to do what you asking." "Mr. Turner," Mama said in a whisper, "what if someone backed your signature? Would you shop in Vicksburg then?" Mr. Turner looked at Mama strangely. "Now who'd sign for me?" "If someone would you do it?" Mr. Turner gazed into the fire, burning to a low ash, then got up and put another log on it, taking his time as he watched the fire shoot upward and suck in the log. Without turning around, he said, "When I was a wee little boy, I got burnt real bad. It healed over, but I ain't never forget the pain of it. It's an awful way to die." Then turning, he faced Mama. "Mis' Logan, you find someone to sign my credit, and I'll consider it deeply." After we left the Turners, Stacy asked, "Mama, who you going to get to sign?" But Mama, her brow furrowed, did not reply. I started to repeat the question, but Stacy shook his head, and I settled back wondering, then fell asleep.